Welcome to Changing the Narrative with your host, Cecil Grant Jr. Today, we're going to talk with a new and exciting author named Brad Gann, a classmate and friend of mine from the Air Force Academy. He's written his first novel titled Nothing Ever Changes. It's good to have you, Brad.
Thanks for inviting.
Oh,
Thanks
no,
for inviting me, Cecil.
glad you're here. Uh, can you just tell our audience a little bit about yourself and what caused you to want to become an author?
Sure. As Cecil said, we were classmates at the Air Force Academy. Uh, I went there from Oklahoma. I grew up in Western Oklahoma in a very small town where there wasn't a lot of opportunity, and so the Air Force Academy kind of provided that opportunity. I married a classmate. She and I have celebrated now 42 years of marriage, and we have 4 kids. Our youngest has special needs, so we spend a lot of time with her, and we love to travel. Travel is a part of this writing experience that I've entered into. But what motivated me to do it was, somewhat, Cecil, like you're changing the narrative. I see a lot of human interest stories when I'm traveling, things that most Americans probably know, but they don't think about or assimilate into their lives. And so I thought what I try to do is, um, create a story, find and create a story about things that I saw partially. I certainly won't tell you everything in this book is true because it's not. You don't see the ugly underbelly of things. So some of those things are what make it fiction. Is I'm guessing, what happens to a homeless child in the Central African Republic because I don't know, and but it's a real thing. And so, one, I was wanting to bring some of those human interest stories to life, but at the same time, write a story that people would find interesting and fun to read.
I want to take a quick second to share um, the the book, and I'll probably do this again later at the end, so people can have an opportunity to. That's Amazon is where the book is available. Is it available? I think you were in a bookstore.
Yes, I got and put into a bookstore in Scottsdale, Arizona,
Okay.
where we spend the winters. And yeah, it's actually an art gallery
Okay.
that views literature as a form of art, and so it is actually for sale in that art gallery called Anticus. It's right in Old Town Scottsdale.
Cool. Well, if you're in Scottsdale, pick the book up, and if you're not, it's available on Amazon. Um, so we'll continue on. What would you say were the keys to writing your novel?
I think the keys were to find uh, the place where I could enter uh, homeless boys into a situation in which they were going to fight their way out of, and and so it really came to just my fleshing out a story, and I'll tell you how I did it. I like to go on long walks, and as I'm walking, I'm talking to myself about the story, and there'd be times I'd be mad at myself as I'm arguing. You can't do that. That would be unrealistic, or, we're not talking about superhumans. We're talking about real people. And so I think the key was to get to a point that I felt like I could start writing. Because
Mhm.
as I started writing, I'd find myself going one way and then, no, that's not the right way, and turn and go a different direction.
So, what do you have any other published material?
I don't. This is my first one. I'm working on my second.
Yeah.
I think the next one is going to be really exciting, and I think will be a page turner. Pretty much, I mean, I think this is a page turner. Things are happening on every page of the book, and that was a goal of mine as well. Is I didn't want to drag us down into political thought or into history. That's not it's not historical fiction. It's current day fiction, but true things that are going on around the world.
Yeah. Yeah. So what was, I mean, you kind of gave some insight into the writing process by going on walks and fighting with yourself about, what's good, what works, what doesn't work. But what was that process like? So let's say you came back from a walk. What did you jump in front of the computer and start typing, or did you actually write on pencil or paper? What were your steps?
It really depended upon how much time I was going to have. If I was only going to have 30 minutes or an hour before something else happened in my family, I'd grab my notebook and I'd write down scenes, or I'd write down actions that I thought would happen to my characters or that I wanted my characters to do. Um, and and then I would come back and build those scenes up later. A lot of times, what I try to do is write those scenes down and then start writing right away, because I found that my first thought, just like taking a test, if you remember Cecil back at the academy, your first thought was usually the right thought, and so I want to be sure I got those done.
And how long did the entire process take as far as writing this story? And what would you say was the hardest and the easiest part of writing a novel?
So the easiest part for me was actually to write the initial story, because I've been creating this story. I'm sorry, creating this story in my head probably for 2 months, as I would walk or exercise or whatever it was that I was doing, where I was letting my mind run. And so writing the story wasn't as hard as I thought, because I had most of that fleshed out. But what was really hard was editing. As I
Yeah.
went back and I said, "Wow, this doesn't fit, or this doesn't make sense," or especially, and it happened in this book, I had to change a character in the very beginning, which meant I had to carry that through the entire story. And going back and reading it, I think before I ever went to publish it, I probably read my book, and I'm not even kidding here, probably 30 times, 35 times. I read it from front to back, and so the hard part was editing. The easy part was putting it down on paper, because once I started, I could run with it.
And did you again manually write, or was your format mostly computer?
But I literally typed it on Word, and as I was typing and I would realize that I want to go somewhere, a lot of times I take a note. Uh, I need this scene to go in a need this scene to end up in a certain place,
Mhm.
and how am I going to get this scene to that position, right? And from there, then I would go to the next scene. And so, yes, as I was typing, I'd also write notes to myself. Don't forget this. We got to get this character to this position, or we're not going to be able to move on. And yeah, that was my strategy. That was the way I did it.
Yeah. And you talked about, reading the story, at least 30 times or more. And I'm currently reading a book by Ian Rand called The Fountainhead, and it's in the 800 page range. And I'm thinking,
Right.
reading it, I was reading it, and I was thinking about this upcoming podcast with you, and thinking, because she to me, she's an extremely talented writer, very in, intense and scenes and characters and all of that stuff. And I'm thinking, even before you finish that book and send it off to be edited, you've got to do it yourself.
Right.
Page 700, you've got to go back to page one to make sure it connects. You just can't just randomly throw stuff around. That just, when I see a book as long as hers are, and even yours, which was over 200 pages, even that's still monumental in my opinion is specifically when you talk about editing, and we've both done that as it relates to writing papers at school. I mean, but our papers weren't 300 pages.
Right.
But
Thank
20,
goodness.
that at that point, that seemed monumental. Trying to reading that art that thesis over and over again. Um, are you self-published, or did you consider going?
That's what you would call this is self-publishing. Um, I Amazon has some nice tools that I'm going to use more of. I mean that was a part of the editing that was tough as I was learning new tools.
Yeah.
And Amazon has some pretty good tools to help you format the book because it has to be, the page has to be a proper size for the words to go on and for the cover to wrap around. And so the formatting of the book was a challenge, but Amazon had some really nice tools to do that. And so, yeah, it's totally self-published. And what I think is really neat about the way the book works is there's no warehouse with my books sitting in them. I think I got 5 books in my drawer, right? But Amazon just prints it on demand,
Oh,
whatever the buyer wants. They'll send it to you in Kindle. If you have a Kindle and you like to read things on your e-reader or paperback or hardback, whatever it is that however it is that you want the book, it is printed on demand. So that's I think really good.
is there a cost, or is it for these?
So that's all wrapped in. Yeah, I think that's fair for people to know. That's all wrapped into the cost that you pay, and if you looked on there as you showed on that page that you showed my book on Amazon, there's 3 places you could buy the book, and I'm not afraid to say what I did was I told Amazon that it was okay for me to make $3.50 a book. From there, they said for it to be on Kindle, it'll be that one says $5.99 to buy. I don't know where that came from, but the $7.99. Oh, if you're on Kindle Unlimited, it's free. That's
Yeah.
what that is. But if you buy the ebook, it's like $7.99. The paperback was $12.99, and the hardcover was $19.99. And so everything above $3.50 was the cost of Amazon to print it in whatever format and then ship it to you. So they covered all that. So I didn't have any upfront costs as far as that was concerned.
And as far as putting the book into stores, I mean,
Yeah.
yeah,
So
I know you have a house in Scottsdale, so that maybe you have connections down there.
and I don't know if you remember, um, uh, what is it? Can't think of feeding Poor Richard's Feed and Read here in Colorado Springs. I'm going to go down and talk to them. I think I could probably get my book in that as well because they like independent authors. But one of the things that is very true, and I would say to anybody is you have to be a self promoter. I
Yeah.
mean, you know that. That's what we're doing here. Is I'm promoting my book, and you're giving me a generous platform to do that. Um, and I talk to a lot of people about it and tell them how to find it, and uh, and right now that's how that's going because I don't have a publisher that's selling my book to Barnes and Noble or Walmart or whatever. I'm selling my book from friend to friend and reader to reader basically. So
And would you, and this is just something I rattle around in my head as it relates to writing, because I look around in my house and I've got shelves and shelves of books and books and books, and there are some authors that are like a John Grisham who's got tons of books, uh, uh, and other authors. You have a lot of new people that are publishing about their life or about how they got from point A to where they are now, and there's books and books and books and books I'm looking at. I know I read it, but I don't remember it because it's so long ago.
right,
And I got to a point because at some point I want to write a book, but I'm looking at this and I'm thinking, first of all, if you don't get something to somebody major, you're not going to make tons of money. It's not. I mean, unless you hit it, I don't even know how you could. You just have to hit. It's things have to line up. It's not that the book isn't any good. It's just the right people haven't seen it yet. So why would I want to go through? Why would I want to spend hours and hours and hours of my life, my time putting into a book that nobody's going to read? And I'm not. Again, I'm talking about me personally. I'm not. That's just a thought I had. Why would you put your blood, sweat, and tears into something that only your friends and family are going to read?
One, I thought it was fun. I like to tell stories, and at the base of this book, I'm telling a story. So I like to tell stories, and I thought the creative process of telling this story, because I got to choose where it went. I got to choose how the characters evolved over my book. And I think in there you will find a couple of characters evolving over the book, and what where they came from makes sense. I mean, you could go, wow, I know that person.
Yeah.
I've met that person, and so I thought that was fun. And so from that, I found it was fun. But do I want people to read the book? I do. That's why I'm very much I'm my own promoter. I send out um, a lot of emails and texts and put my book out on Facebook. And we're doing this.
Yeah.
And I walked into Antioch and said, "Hey, do you guys, hold or show independent authors?" And they were like, "Yes, we'd love to have independent authors." So I do want people to read it, but I want them to read it because they would enjoy it. And I think I have something to say. And so hopefully they read it and they got to hear what I have to say, and it's all, and that will all be fine. And in the end, and I know this would ring true to you, Cecil, I hope my grandkids have my books on their shelf, right? And when they read them, they can say, "Oh wow, that was my grandpa," right? And something that might transfer to my great grandkids, who I may very well never meet. So that was a little bit of what I wanted to do.
Yeah.
So that's what motivated me, and I wasn't worried. I thought I told myself, if 5 people read this book that are outside my family, I'm going to be happy. And I've had a lot more readers than that, so it's all good.
Yeah. And it's the same. And I asked that question and then I answered it myself, and your answer was similar to mine. Um, and it also resonated with the podcast and writing that I do on Substack, where I was told by a person once, I started the podcast and I had like 25, people that listened to it. And, I started to get discouraged because, you've seen all these other people have, he's got 100,000 listeners and he's got 10,000 listeners and you got 25. And she said, imagine every week you go into a room and there's 25 people there that want to hear what you have to say. That's gold right there.
Yeah.
So whether it's 5 people, 25 people, if 5 people, and those 5 people, depending on what you say or what you're presenting, that could change somebody's life. It's not for you to know that, but it could. So you just keep doing what you're doing, and I think there has to be a level of passion in it. There has to be that the reason I'm doing this isn't to make money. My reason is to get a message out and
Right.
hopefully influence the lives of other people in some way. So,
Yeah. That's really the whole thought process, right? Would I have loved to have been picked up by a big publisher? Absolutely. But the likelihood of that is remote. I would share, a lot of the big authors, the way that they work, and I could have done that as well, as I could have sent my book to Tom Clancy or to John Grisham and said, "Hey, is this a book that you would like to put your name on and
Yeah.
I'll be the sub-author, right? I mean, that's the way a lot of books are done today, or a lot of them are published. But as a guy, I'm not going to do that. I'm going to publish it under my name, and that's where it goes is where it goes.
And
So,
it's more like you said as well. The more cogent point is something that you hope is on your grandchild's bookshelf,
right,
and they
that's
get
right,
passed on to their children, and you know, or maybe it's inspirational to one of your grandkids, and they become an author that really
yeah,
puts
right,
something that's amazing. Not again, it's just inspirational. Something that might
right.
be to
You just never know what that seed's going to grow, and
yeah.
so I mean that's certainly a part of what I'm doing. Um, The funnest part, though, is writing the story. The
Yeah.
second funnest part is when people like you tell me, "Hey, I like that book. That was good." I've actually had 3 calls this week
Oh
with
wow.
people saying, "Hey, I finished the book, and I really thought that it was that was really good." So, um, and they all say, "I commend you for." Almost all of them say this, just exactly what you said. I commend you for writing a book I've always wanted to. And I'd say, "Well, do it." I mean, it's not impossible today. It's pretty easy.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
And that what you just said kind of leads into this next question, and we kind of talked about it a little bit. And this part might be a tad bit long, but I think it's important. Um, and I think hopefully you'll you can kind of add to what I'm about to share with you. We talked before about um, uh, that I thought there were a lot of memorable moments and characters in your novel. But I found that there was one part in your book that I actually I read the book on my Kindle, and I actually saved this particular lesson or this particular group of sentences, and then I went to Chat GPT. When you put a sentence like that or a sentence or a group of sentences into Chat GPT, it gives you this dissertation of what the hidden meaning of what you wrote. So um, let me get to this. And I thought this was on page 39 on the Kindle, and it said, "Life is really long, and we don't take enough advantage of opportunities we're given. Too many people miss out on chances to really do something which makes them feel their life is slipping away." And ChatGPT says that those words are basically saying you're tapping into something very real, a quiet kind of regret that builds over time when we let chances pass us by. Life can feel long, especially in the moment when we feel disconnected from purpose or meaning. But paradoxically, it can also feel shockingly short when we look back and realize how much we delayed or avoided. The feeling of life slipping away often comes from one of a few places. Fear, distraction are two of them. What's powerful is recognizing that this awareness you're expressing, which you did as a writer, is already a form of clarity, one that not everybody gets to. It means you're awake to the ideas that your life is yours to shape. I just wanted to kind of because when I that was one. There were probably a few passages I highlighted, but that one I highlighted, and it stuck with me. What? How did you how did you come up with that?
I have argued the uh, the saying that life is short for a long time. I look at, and then I'm sharing it with my daughter right now, who's expecting her first child and my first grandchild for that matter.
Oh wow,
But
congratulations!
I've always felt that life is really long, and people just don't want uh, look at moments and catalog them in their life, like graduating from the Air Force Academy. I mean, that was a huge moment, and you catalog that in your life. That happened for us 42
Two,
years ago now, 43 years ago, you
42.
know, and that was 43 years ago. That's a long time. So one of the things that I like to say is life is really long we just don't take advantage of and remember the things that were a part of our life. And as my daughter's getting ready to have her first baby and she's having all the anxiety of a new mom, right? Can I do this? Oh my gosh, what I do? This is going to be a lifetime of work. I think if people think about how their life is staged over time, there's a time to raise kids, and you should enjoy that. Everybody always says, love your children, it'll go by fast. It will go by fast. Why it goes by fast? Because people don't pay attention to those moments, those simple moments of maybe laying on the floor with your infant grandchild and playing goo-goo with them, right? I mean, those are really important things. And I think once you categorize those things over your life, you begin to realize I've had an unbelievable opportunity to live in this world. And these are the things that I got to do. And life hasn't been short for me. It's not short. I got to go to the Air Force Academy. I got to get married. I got to have 4 children, to raise my grandchild, traveled, right? I get to do these things, and I do them because consciously I'm thinking about them.
Yeah.
And I think that's what I'd love to encourage people to do. Just like you say, change the narrative.
Yeah.
I've got a few other places out there in my next book too, where I'm going to try to change the narrative, things that I think we say that really hold us back, as opposed to let us go forward. Yeah. Thank you for bringing that up, because that is a big deal to me. I probably monthly in a conversation with someone, they say, God, life is short. And I go, no, I don't believe that. I don't believe that. So, yeah.
I and you talked about with the, grandchildren, and we've got a lot.
You have a lot. Congratulations on that. And they love their grandpa. I see those pictures.
But we when we have them and you spend time with them, it's different from when we had our kids. Because with the grandkids, I'll sit and just stare at them. They're doing nothing, and I'll just stare at them and just watch them doing stuff. When they sleep, I kind of look at them and just see them sleep. Or I do more of the things like you talked about, like just lay on the floor and play with them, or play in the pool, or listen to silly songs with them on the radio. We did that the other day. And those are those moments you talked about that you can't recapture. You can't go back to when the kid was 4 and do something that you never, and so you just build upon, and then, you realize that life isn't short. Sometimes it seems like it goes by fast as like.
Yes, I'll share with you a saying that I've carried a long time. My grandma told me this when I was sitting at our kitchen table trying to do my calculus before going to the academy. I was in high school and I was trying to, make sure that I made the right grades and got where I needed to go. And she came up to me one day and she said, Brad, you know what? You really need to learn to be happy where you are. Because I was just working so hard and I was getting so stressed. She goes, just relax. You need to be happy where you are. And I think that helps you realize how long life is. I'm happy in this moment. I'm happy in this moment. I've never done a podcast. I think this is awesome, and if we get 25 people to watch it, that'll be great, and that'll be a milestone or a moment in my life that I won't forget. So being happy where I am ended up being a big, big part of my life. So, yeah.
I definitely agree. I'm glad I brought that up for you. So we also chit-chatted a little bit about your novel, and I'm not going to give away any secrets, but I believe the young lady's name is Mary, and I tell you, I didn't like her.
All right. Didn't like her in the beginning.
Do you know a Mary? Do you have a Mary?
I do know. I know several Marys. Right? Mary. All my characters are compilations of multiple people,
Yeah.
but Mary is a very important character in my book. I think she shows the most growth
Hmm.
and the most character when it comes down to it. And so yeah, Mary, I know Marys, yeah, and I've met them and I've seen them over my life, and they all don't evolve like my Mary did. Sometimes they're stuck in the way they were.
Right.
But I thought uh, that she was going to be a central character, and that's a good example of I had Mary being bad all the way through my book before, and I said I think she's an opportunity, and so I worked on her character.
And I wanted to go back to something you talked about, even with the character development, um, and we'll talk later about some of the scenes that you talk about. I mean, how did you read books about how to write a novel? Did you just figure it out based on, I've read a number of books and it's like this, I'll just copy what they, they're kind of the format and structure
Right.
they did, or how'd you go
The,
about
my writing style uh, certainly mimics the books I read. I like to read Ken Follett, who's a historical fiction writer. I read John Grisham. I read Brad Taylor. So my style follows the books that I wrote or that I read. Um, but really, I thought about this probably talking with you. You know, when people ask me how did what made you want to do this? One of the big things is I've always been a storyteller. I love to tell stories, but if I'm telling you a story just like today, you got about 15 minutes, maybe, to listen to me tell a story. Most likely, I have five. And so I'm like, how do I tell a story that's longer than 5 minutes?
it?
You know, how do I develop a character? Somebody's going to let me develop Mary over 15 minutes. I mean, you're not going to let me do that. And so the best way for me to do that would be to write a book. And so um, I think, I don't know how long it took you to read the book, probably 6 hours cumulative, you know? So I got to talk to you for 6 hours of my time, which is not, not very common in our day to day life.
Yeah, you're right. You're right.
Right.
So the other point that I wanted to talk about, and we chit chat about this leading up to this event here, was you're writing about these four boys, and they end up getting captured and taken into a camp, and one of the younger boy ended up being obviously had some bad things happen to him from the army, the other people, the people who were running the camp. And when he had the opportunity, he killed the one guy who was obviously very mean. But you don't describe what happened. You leave that up to our imagination. And for me, I based on your the style and the things you said, I knew what happened. And at that point, I was about ready to just close the book. I'm like, can't do this. But we talked about how situations like that, or how in a book you don't actually describe what happens. You leave it to your reader to imagine what happens, and how that's almost better. It kind of really draws you. It makes it more personal to you, I think, versus you saying this is what happened to him. How did you come to that place?
Well, I am like you. I didn't want to write it any more than you wanted to read it. Right. So to begin with, that's one of the reasons why I didn't, why you don't find in the book, because I don't want to describe that
Yeah.
any more than anybody wants to read it. But also when you come to think about, and the people that I would echo this from is a good comedian
Mm-hmm.
leaves you at the end at the punchline. Doesn't explain the punchline. He leaves you there, and everybody fills in the punchline where how they need to. And many times it's the same, but it's But if you went and talked to everyone in the comedian's audience, they all wouldn't fill in the unsaid verbiage the same way because it came from their experience. And I actually find that I like that in the books that I read is I want to be a part of the book. And that allows I thought that allowed the reader to be a part of the book. I did that in a couple of places where I took us right to where something was going to happen and we stopped. That was the most significant one, right? But then we left it for the reader to fill in the blanks that made the most sense.
And that's why I think I asked earlier about, if you took classes on writing or how you got to that place, because that it seems like in a lot of books now, people don't, obviously, and in movies, they don't leave anything to the imagination. You're going to see what I want you to see, and I don't want you to imagine anything. So that's why I kind of asked that. The other thing is your description of Africa, and I thought it was stunning. From a lot of different standpoints, it might be hard to understand, but the descriptions that you gave of the terrain and the land and how beautiful it is, and then you contrast that to the life of those living there, from poor orphan kids running the streets trying to find something to eat out of the garbage can and hopefully not get killed, to just comparing that again to the majestic, the scenery and the animals and all of that stuff. And then even taking it further, comparing it to the lifestyle and the lives of those traveling from the U.S. to visit Africa, and the life they live, and the beauty of Colorado, but and their lifestyle, comparing it to the lifestyle that these kids have in your story in Africa. And I thought that was just the kind of seeing all of that. Was that planned, or did you?
That was that was very, very, very purposeful. And that was probably where my book started. Because Sharon and I had been to Africa. We were on safari in Tanzania, and Tanzania doesn't have the strife that happens in the Central African Republic and the Congo. So I couldn't really set the story realistically in Tanzania because it wouldn't fit. But Sharon and I were both struck by how beautiful the land and the animals and just the sunrises is unbelievable. The sunsets were equally remarkable. We talk about, as a matter of fact, this weekend we were seeing some friends from Carswell days, and we were showing them. We all took turns showing us vacations or things that were important in our life, and one of them was a sunset scene that Sharon has on the top of her list of all-time favorite things when we were on that safari. But that's where this whole story came from, because there was 4 couples on the safari, Sharon and I and 3 other couples. And we all are very affluent, and compared to the people we ran into in Africa, ultra rich. I'm not bragging. I'm just saying that, the people in Africa that we saw did not have what we had. And we could see that. And that's kind of where the disparity came against, like, man, these people, they want to live just like we do. And that was kind of also the point is, a family in Africa wants the same thing a family in America has, but things aren't changing for them. They continue to fight these same struggles over and over and over. And we saw that, and that was kind of where the whole story started. That was the base. And then I grew from there. And so, okay, how do I bring these differences out and create conflict that might be realistic? Because I think it is very realistic. And and I think every story needs to have a yin and a yang. I mean, if it's all the same, then we then we get a little bored, right? Yeah.
I mean, I thought the contrasting all of those, the beauty and the wealth and the poor and they all kind of, mingling and like you said, at the base, those orphans just wanted security, love,
Right. Yep.
to sleep and eat,
Right.
as Americans do as well.
Yep.
So it's, again, I thought that was great. So, uh, getting close to wrapping this up, talk about your next novel without giving details. You got a title, a release
I,
date?
I have a title, but I don't know if it's going to stick, but we'll see. It's called, right now I'm calling it Allies or Enemies with a question mark. The story is set in Saigon, Vietnam, and it is the conflict is a conflict that we experience today on TV almost at least once a week. Is the conflict between the United States and China on spreading our economic influence, and just happens to be happening in Vietnam. And again, I try to create a few characters. I'm almost done with the book, but I'm going in my edit. I'm going to have to go back and make sure that I emphasize the characters that need to be emphasized, and so I picked another human interest part of the story. I mean, I can tell you it's about human trafficking, which happens a lot in Southeast Asia, and so we have human trafficking and oil being the two parts, and we have Vietnam in the middle, and China and the United States on both sides. So that's where the story is coming at.
Do you have a expected release date or?
I should be September. Okay. I think September 1st will give me plenty of time to get edited, get formatted, get a book cover.
that's
that kind of stuff.
Yeah. So what has been the best part of this writing journey, and what advice would you have for someone who wanted to get into writing?
The absolute best part is that I get to tell the story from my perspective. And I think we all would love, I mean, I got 40 minutes of your time, and I love the fact that you gave me 40 minutes of your time. But I could not have told either one of my stories in 40 minutes.
Yeah.
So I get to tell things that are important to me in a story form, and hopefully people can enjoy it. The second part of your question, help me with that again. You asked a two-part question.
Oh, advice for someone who wants to become a writer.
Yeah, advice someone wants to do. I think don't fear that editing and that publication process. That is work. I won't kid you 1 minute. Making the book cover fit, formatting it to go on the pages right, and getting it edited so you don't have a bunch of present tense mixed with past tense. Tough. Oh, that was tough, and I think that will stop some people. But that's just part of the work. You do that, and then you get a little help, and it gets done. But starting it, and think about what you want to say. Start from what's important to you. What do you want to say? Do you want to talk about things of inequality, or do you want to talk about things of love, or what do you want to talk about? Start there. Create some characters that you know, and have them start interacting.
Cool. Well, Brad, I appreciate you giving me 40 minutes of your time. This has been enlightening, and I feel like my hope and willingness to do this podcast was because, one, I'm interested in writing a book, and I think there's a lot of things that you said that have been motivational, inspirational to me, to move forward, to not fear the process, that kind of thing. And and the other part is, in my opinion, the book was very good, very well written. and hopefully we can get some other folks to look at this podcast or the audio and the video and make the decision to purchase the book and enjoy it. And we look forward to the next book.
Yeah.
And you call it your Travelers series. So we anticipate you're going to write, you're writing your second one, and we anticipate more coming after that.
Yeah, it did. And I've been to Vietnam, and that's where that comes from. And so I like to maybe set these books in places where we've been, so I can, describe like what I did about the way I saw Africa. I get to describe what I saw in Vietnam, and I thought that's why it's called the Traveler Series.
Cool. Well, I appreciate you taking the time to talk to me. Continued success to you, and when your next novel comes out, I'll obviously get that, and maybe we can do this again.
And we'll do it again. Absolutely. All right. Have a great day, man.
You too. Take care, and thank you again.
Bye.